No, this is amazing.
Yeah, I'd rather talk to people one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, and we weren't, and the people running weren't looking right at them the whole time either, which I think is less nerve-wracking.
Yeah, if they could be in the other room on the outside of that wall, it would be easier.
A few feet back, right? A few feet back. Yeah, yeah.
So does Betsy control these mics? Is that how?
No, yeah, we tested yours.
Yeah, she did. How do you activate it?
It is activated. You look up and the green light right there. As long as the green light's on.
It's just, they're too far away from us to pick.
And you have to have it right by your mouth, like this.
Like this. Yeah.
All right. Is this all new stuff?
We got it with Zoom.
Oh,
Wow, there are a lot of people on Zoom too.
wow. Look at all those caller inners too. Look at all the caller inners.
It's nice,
Yeah.
but I'm still surprised.
Hi, Jean. How you doing?
Good to have you here.
Gosh.
You can pull up a chair right there. An outdoor chair right there.
Where was it?
Somebody who's running for it.
Sure.
Well, I'm very concerned about the HOA fees. Whenever even during the voting was closed,
Right.
was closed, we're still paying the same amount.
Because there were ongoing costs to maintain.
But we're still using it. It's like,
I
we're
know.
buying something and not.
Great. Oh, thanks for doing that.
Right?
Glad they weren't in Roseville.
It's so much to maintain. I understand about the-
No.
I really do.
You mean, Nancy Arndorfer? So you're asking about Nancy Arndorfer? Yeah, no, I haven't seen her.
Maybe there should be some kind of like
I did, but I don't see her here. I saw her sign. She's right back there.
2 years that something is closed. I would.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Somebody.
I did see her come in.
Yeah.
2 years.
That would have to be, you'd have to see, you could use the tennis court.
Let's see.
I don't play tennis, I play pickleball, but I know we played pickleball when the pools were closed. So I mean, the tennis courts were just available. And I don't know how much of the dues factor
Do you
into
have
that, because I've
children,
not
Mary?
been on the
Oh,
board.
yeah.
How much of a portion of your dues factors into the maintenance of the pool? So I don't know.
Daughter, my grandson, yeah, they close in this area, Sacramento.
And I don't think it's
Oh,
even
what part?
part of it. I just wondering.
In actually Seattle. My father and stepmother had the Kitsap Peninsula just across from there, and I have
The
nieces
chlorine
that
and all
live
the
in
pH has to be tested.
Paulsbo and Bremerton and Silverdale.
I
That area,
other
yeah.
places.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Okay, yeah. Oh.
Same standard.
I understand where you're concerned about things, they go up and up every year. And because the water meters.
Oh, yeah. It's nice to have that flexibility, isn't it? No longer 5:30 in the morning alarms and the rest. Yeah, I don't miss that at all.
Supposedly they would lower the
You would ask that. Elapsed time is not one of my things. Probably 10.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So,
Good afternoon on a beautiful spring day. It's not raining, but I wish it were. Hello, Bob. My name is John Baker. I'm the current president of the association, and I'm going to kick this forum off. This is a forum to meet candidates running for our board of directors. Before I kind of explain how this works, I would like to recognize the nominating committee. Karen, where are you? Karen? Karen.
She's in.
Hello, Karen. Well, Karen Lowry is the chair, And her members, yeah, this is a lot of work. There she is. We're bashing you. I'm kidding, kidding. And Will Vizard, Will, where are you? There he is. And Marcus Dasher. I'd also like to recognize the Outreach Committee who helped put this on. Emily, please stand. Are other members of your team here? Hi, Margaret. Oh, okay. All right, great. Oh, okay. Marcy, where are you? I knew you were she.
Over there.
Oh, there you are. It's a good thing you're tall, Marcy. It's a good thing you're tall. Okay, before we start, most of you know this, but I kind of owe you an explanation of how this works. We have a 5-member board of directors. And when you are elected to the board, you serve for 2 years. And yet we have an election every year. So it's an odd number. So this year we have 2 positions open and we have 3 candidates. And next year we will have 3 positions open and I don't know how many candidates there will be. So it's a 2 and 3 every other year. So everybody, did I lose you on that? Everybody got that? Okay. You know, I ask my students, did I lose you? And I get these blank looks. So, okay. Let me quickly introduce the board of directors. And then I'm going to turn this over to Betsy, who is going to explain how the audio visual Zoom is going to work. And then Betsy, you will turn it over to Will, and Will will start the proceedings themselves. So your board of directors, Marcus Dasher. Mary Gray. Ashley Tangeris, is Ashley here? No. And Linda Cook, who I saved for last. Linda has been a board member for 6 years. 6 years of a thankless job. You have 1 more, actually 2 more meetings. And then you're going to ride off into the sunset. So we really need to give her a recognition. And this is something. We will miss you. She and I are almost the same age, so that kind of helps. Okay. All right. All right. With that, I'd like to have Betsy start forward briefly. Oh, there's Ashley. We were introducing the board. You're tardy. And Betsy, if you'd like to kind of run through how the visual and audio will work, and then you can turn it over to Will.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
So we have 13 participants joining us via Zoom. Welcome. I think you have a pretty good view of your candidates. On the left-hand side, as you're facing them, is Mary Gray. Mary, will you raise your hand for the people on Zoom? Thank you. Next to Mary is Cheryl Nelson, and then Jackie Grebitus. And so when we get to the question and answer part, we'll let you know. And on your screen where the controls are, where you down at the bottom where you have your, stop video or mute, you should see something that says reactions. It's a little smiley face with a plus. And from there, when you hover over that, you'll get a raise hand signal. So if you would just raise your hand, we'll make sure that you get called on to ask your question when we get to that point. Okay, and from what I understand, it can be a little confusing whether raised hand or clapping hand. So if you're looking up at the 5 emojis, the one on the left is clapping hands, and you can clap anytime, nobody will mind that. But if you want to ask a question, choose the raise hand, which is just the hand with the fingers facing upwards and the thumb out. Okay, and I'm going to let Will get this started. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got everybody seated. Okay, let me run through exactly what's going to transpire here. We will start out each candidate will give an opening statement limited to 3 minutes, please. We will then pose 3 questions to each of the candidates, and I'll rotate who gets the question first as we go through the 3 candidates, in which they will have 3 minutes to respond to the questions. And again, we ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. Otherwise, this thing starts stretching out and people start losing attention. We will then open it up for questions from the audience, both the Zoom audience and the physical audience here. We're asking the audience to restrict your questions to a 2-minute question. So if you've got a question, please think through what it is you want to ask. Don't, start by going through a 10-minute explanation of why you're upset about something and then ask the question. Same for the Zoom folks. And again, you were explained to raise your hand and Betsy can respond to you. Then we'll give each candidate 3 minutes for a wrap up. After that, there are goodies, I guess, in the next room. And the candidates presumably will stick around to chat with you if you wish to talk to them in more detail. Okay. So let me start out. I'll just start out from left to right. Jackie Grebitus, and then just work across, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jackie Grebitus. I've lived in Nepenthe for 21 years. I've lived in Sacramento all but 3 years of my life. And I'm not going to give you the math on that. But I love it here. I recently retired, so that's part of my reason to get involved in the board. I've been on the outreach committee for a year. And so the next steps seem like running for the board. In my career, I worked in the insurance claims industry for 42 years. And I think a lot of the skills that I have from that transfer to this, because the process of handling claims is investigating claims, gathering facts, evaluating facts, and applying the applicable laws, statutes, and regulations, and making a decision. So I think a lot of that is transferable skills to this position. I handled claims, I managed claims people, and then I audited claims. So, I think the management skills are also transferable to this position. And I'd like to see, I think my main purpose in running for the board is I want to see how the money's spent. I want to see where it goes and why and how. And I'm really curious about that. And I know that everyone's concerned about dues with the water meters affecting what we're going to be paying. So I'd like to have some input into that. Thank you.
Oh, well, I have to say that I'm very, very grateful to be able to live in this community. I've been here about 9 years. I thoroughly enjoy it. This is our 50th year, and I would like to be part of things to help us give another 50 years so that we remain vibrant and an active, beautiful community. I'm interested in being on the board because I kind of see the board as a hub, sort of the center, receiving information, comments, complaints, whatever from the people who live here, people who give us information and need problems solved. I also see the board as the input from legal and mandated changes that we need to plan for and introduce to the community. And that's a process I think is important for communication, for being part of what's happening and being responsive to people. I personally am a person who likes to work with people, likes to listen to people, likes to be active in finding solutions and participating in solutions. The things I'm looking for this year, I know the board is working on a number of situations now, and I would, if I were elected, I'd be moving into things that I don't have a lot of, I would need to learn about. But the things that I'm most curious about are how the board is going to be bringing people in this community in to some of the decision making. We've got several things that are coming up. Paint color changes, we've got water meters, as Jackie said, how that's being implemented, the questions and things from that. And water itself is going to continue to be a problem for us, water conservation. How do we make plans to be in a position when the next mandate comes, when the next required change comes, to be able to move into that and still be able to afford it and be practical? In addition, I know that we have a state law now about organic waste that's going to be coming. How is it going to affect us? I have no clue, but I'd like to participate in how we solve that problem and make the adjustments that are necessary. So that's why I would like to be part of the board. I think that it's a valued thing. We have talented people on our committees. They're a resource for the board. We have a long-standing management company with a great deal of experience that we also can turn to, but it also requires the board members to do their own thinking, own research, and eventually make some really tough decisions if necessary. But I think they need to be made for the people who live here over other things. Money always is an important issue with that, though.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I've been a member of the board for 2 years, and it has been an incredibly marvelous experience. The first year was challenging, as I'm sure we all try to forget. It was COVID, and we were all, seriously in lockdown. And one of the amazing things the board was able to do was get the pools open and provide a space for all of us to enjoy something when there really was very little out there. This last year, more opportunities have opened up. There are 4 key things that I want to focus on that as a member of this board, I'm very proud of. The first is improving transparency and communication with the community. Transparency has been improved by bringing our contracts into the open meeting and out of executive session so that you know how we're spending your money. Communication has been improved by adding homeowner forums to the beginning and the end of our board meetings. So we hear from you. We know what your concerns are, what bothers you, and we get ideas and suggestions. It's been really valuable. The second thing I want to focus on is safety, and we all care about the safety of our community. The board worked very collaboratively with the ILS committee and had a safety forum. Out of that came really valuable suggestions for how homeowners can improve their safety. And one really key suggestion that, where is Peter? Peter helped bring to us, he's on the ILS committee, light matters. And he found the light bulbs that will light up our community, but not affect night light. We have them and they will be installed soon. The third thing is financial. We all care about our dues and we all care about how money is spent. The board worked very hard to keep the dues from rising. Lots of effort went into that, particularly with the finance committee. The other thing is, how is our money spent? I discovered that our thermostats were set to heat and cool all day long, 24 hours a day. And by simply resetting the thermostats, we have saved hundreds of dollars. Finally, our grounds. We're going to be challenged. We're going to have less water. We're going to have to use it well. And the plants that we put in need to be low water. The board's done 2 things. One, did an irrigation study. We now know where we need to focus on and what sprinklers we need to focus on. And 2, we hired a landscape architect to provide us expertise. He told us he will be telling us what low plants to put in. He focused on the maintenance that we need to do and what we have done in the past that he doesn't necessarily support. So those are all things I'm proud of. I'm looking for your vote in the future to continue to serve you in all the ways that I have in the past. Thank you.
Okay. A number of questions were assembled by the nominating committee from folks throughout the community. We narrowed it down to 3 or far more. So I will throw these out again. Please keep it to 3-minute response. I don't want to have to chop anybody off. Okay. And let me just say, for all, I know a lot of people in here are committee members. And for the board member, very often you'll hear people address, I spent 8 years on the board, so, people would stop you and talk to you and it's like, well, everybody wants this and everybody wants that and everybody agrees on this and everybody agrees on that. Let me assure you, based on experience, everybody never agrees. So, the people who serve on the committees and particularly, some of the committees who are very hardworking, spend a lot of time. They all do a good job, but some demand more time than others. And the board are all doing this voluntarily. They get no fiduciary or financial reward of any kind.
I'm sorry, I'm getting comments. People are asking to use the.
Oh, pardon me. They get no direct benefits other than psychic benefits and a sense of accomplishment. So I hope that those of you both out there in Never Never Land and the folks here understand that you owe those board members a vote of thanks because they manage this associate, even though we have a tremendous manager in Betsy. Policy is set by the board, decisions are made by the board. Betsy carries them out. So, okay. Start with you.
Okay.
And we'll just work right across.
Okay.
Board members have a fiduciary responsibility. What is your understanding of the role as a fiduciary of Nepenthe?
That's my understanding of it is based a lot on the insurance work that I did, because as a claims professional handling claims and managing claims adjusters, you have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility to the insureds, the claimants, the shareholders, the management, and your fellow employees to manage the money in a way that is responsible and complies with all state laws and regulations to protect the company, to protect the shareholders. And I think that translates into what it would mean to be a fiduciary for Nepenthe is you are responsible for doing the best job on behalf of the entity of the homeowners association.
Okay, Cheryl. What does your view of the future of Nepenthe look like?
My view, and perhaps it's a little idealistic, is that this is a community, a solid community of people who understand that they have benefits here, but some of those benefits have some cost to them. Not just our dues, but also a responsibility to be social, to be civil, to cooperate in decisions and things that need to be done. We have a beautiful place to live, but we may not always be able to keep it exactly as it is now. Changes are going to be coming. I have no clue what, but they will come. And when they come, we want to be in a position, I think, to adapt for the betterment of everyone here, plus the community. To me, the trees, everything in this community are something worth saving, but we have to be very careful about how we approach saving them and what it costs us and what we're willing to give up to do that. And again, I think it's people who live here who say what this community needs to look like. It's not me. It's not my choice. And it's not, I think, the board's choice. It's input from the people who live here. How do you want this community to look?
Okay. I should have pushed the same question down. I jumped questions here, but let's start that way anyway. Finally, Mary, when being part of a team, what attributes do you think are the most important? Give examples of times when you have demonstrated these.
Being a part of a team requires listening. It's number one. You have to be willing to listen to a different opinion and honor it. Number two, you have to be willing to ask the right questions. It isn't just about thinking you heard what was said, but actually asking questions to verify what the person meant and what matters to them. The third thing is to collaborate in a way that a solution is reached that the team all can live with. Not all always agree with, but can live with. I've worked on huge infrastructure projects for 20 years. Lots of conflict was involved in that initially until we developed a collaborative process where we brought everybody involved together to learn what mattered to them, what their mission was, and what they wanted to be accomplished. So again, to summarize, to be a good team member, the number one thing I believe is listening. The number two thing is asking questions, really caring about what the team members think. And number three, searching for a good collaborative solution that works for everyone.
Okay, Cheryl, why don't you take the same question?
To work on a team means that you're all kind of equal, that you leave your ego at the door, you leave your personal interests at the door, you leave your preferences at the door, and you open your mind and you start asking, as Mary said, questions. What do you think? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's it going to cost us to get what we're talking about? Do we have the resources to do that? And it's open conversation, it's open communication, and it's as equals. People who have ideas that may be different can find common ground, and that's what you develop working as a team. You may not agree, you may not really like the end result, but you work together to find common ground. As I said, it's a vote process, but it's a group, not one person. I learned working on the grand jury that there's nothing that comes out that isn't from the entire team, because otherwise it doesn't work. There's always somebody that can stab it or disagree or create commotion. So you find common ground.
Okay. And go ahead and take the same question.
Same question
Yes.
that they've both given excellent answers to that I agree with. So I don't know that there's much more to say about that because I agree with everything they said. I think the main component of it is listening, because you have to listen to other people and ask the right questions about what they think, because some people don't like to voice their opinion. So you have to get it out of them so everyone's happy and collaborates. But I agree with Mary and Cheryl. There's not a whole lot more to say.
Okay, then, Mary, could you address the question of fiduciary responsibility and your understanding of the role for Nepenthe?
Yes. So fiduciary responsibility to me means leaving my ego at the door and serving the community for which I'm on the board for. To me, that's fiduciary responsibility. And it's what I've really tried hard to do as a board member. One of the key elements of that most people connect to fiduciary is financial, because it affects all of us. And that's something that is vital. We want our dues not jumping up. We want our expenditures reasonable. And again, as a board member with a fiduciary responsibility, it's something I have strived to do.
Okay. And again, fiduciary responsibility.
Well, it's being accountable, I think, for your decisions, for the impact upon people who live here. It's not always money. Sometimes you spend money because sooner or later you're going to save money. And we have to take that into account when we make decisions. It means making a decision that no one in the community would like, but it's a decision that makes sense for the current situation and for the future, and you just have to accept it. It means looking hard at the money, balancing it, accounting for it, and looking at the future, not just today.
All right, everybody has attacked that one. Jackie, what is your view of the future of Nepenthe?
Yeah, I like it the way it is. But I think we're going to have to adapt to some current situations with the water and, excuse me, and other changes that may come our way. So I'd like to see it to continue to flourish and thrive. But we're going to have to adapt to make that possible. I just don't see any other way out of it. So we're going to have to change with the situation, and hopefully it will be not that painful. So.
All right, and Mary.
Same question? Okay. I love Nepenthe. And so, of course, the future of Nepenthe to me is very similar to what it is today. We're a community, and I feel like the board needs to find ways to communicate with you and find out what it is that you value. I mean, that's what matters. I mean, what I've heard is our landscape, our, those types of things. I know the board has worked hard to like put new siding on. We now have 50-year siding instead of the siding we have. I think those are the type of changes that no one sees, but keeps Nepenthe a beautiful community. And I think we all are going to be impacted by less water. And I'm hopeful that the changes that we make in our landscaping and our irrigation will continue to make our surrounding community very beautiful.
Okay. Now, we have questions in the audience. Marcus has the microphone for anybody who has a question. Yes, Marcus?
Thank you. You've addressed some of this, but my question is, how do you respond to finding it when you find yourself really having a problem dealing with difficult situation and especially difficult people? Because as Will said, people just don't always agree. And maybe talk about some of your strategies for how you would respond to the difficult person, maybe using an example.
Okay, in case anybody didn't hear, the question was what sort of strategies do you propose for dealing with difficult individuals? I'm sure we have none in Nepenthe, but all right. Why don't we just start with Mary and come down?
It's an excellent question. Thank you. And I think the way you framed it is nice, Will. I don't see people as difficult. I see people with different viewpoints, different perhaps values. And the goal is to understand them. And again, I think I talked about the listening skill. You have to listen. People are not always going to agree. We just don't. We have different opinions. And asking the right questions. So I truly understand what the issue is. Sometimes I think I hear it, but by asking a question, I'm clearer on it. And finally, I think working collaboratively with anyone, knowing they've been heard, is a positive.
It's hard to even begin with that. I think the first thing is acknowledging the pain, the anger, the frustration, and letting people know that it's real, that I know it's real. Whether or not it's what I'm feeling, they need to know what they're feeling is real. The best, I can't give you a specific example, but I worked with people in a veterinary medical teaching hospital, people whose animals were dying, people who had no money to pay for the care that would save their lives. Dealing with that emotion means you meet them. You acknowledge, you recognize it, you give them a few options, choices, and you help walk with them to something that is peace, whether that's understanding, agreement or not, but talk down where it is to where you can find a solution that's acceptable for both people.
Okay, and lastly. Jackie?
Okay. Dealing with difficult people was kind of a hallmark of my whole career in insurance claims. And what you do, like Mary and Cheryl both said, is you have to listen. I think the biggest issue for people is just wanting to be heard, whether you agree with them or not. They want you to hear their side of the story. So you listen first, and then you gather facts and look at any relevant documents, contracts, financial documents, and this is specifically relative to claims, but you make your decision based on the facts, and then you provide the person with the facts and tell them why you're making this decision. And I think explaining why is the second half of the equation. People need to know why you're doing what you're doing, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But listening to people takes a lot of the difficulty out of it, because they just want to be heard. Mhm.
Okay, well, I think we had somebody else.
I wanted to ask what types of activities you've been involved in here in Nepenthe to build community. It's one thing to talk about it and another thing to demonstrate it. And I'm curious as to what each of you has done to demonstrate your commitment to building community.
Okay, Cheryl?
I've been part of several groups. I'm a person who always has bright ideas. They're not always ideas I can carry through or bring to fruition, but there are so many wonderful people who live in this community who will step up and say, I can help with that. Let's see, maybe some of you remember the 4th of July parade. That was the first one that Nepenthe has done. In fact, Campus Commons as a whole has ever done. The Halloween celebrations, we did the first one here in the clubhouse, then COVID. Actually, we did one where we reversed trick or treat, rang doorbells and delivered candy because kids couldn't come out. We did our last Halloween meet and greets. We've put those together, and they're just ideas for how do we all get together? How do we share some time together? How do we understand each other a little bit? And so that we can support each other as neighbors, not just as people who we pay the same dues and this is our house, but how do we build our neighborhood community, which makes the whole community? So those are examples. There are probably other things that I've done, but those are the ones that pop in my head first.
Okay, Jackie?
I've been on the outreach committee for the last year. Has it been that long, Emily? And, we organized Jazz by the Pool. We're working on the 50th anniversary party. Cheryl's been on that too. You didn't say that, did you?
Well, no, I have been on the committee.
You had
yes.
other stuff. And that has pretty much been it. Since I was working I retired a year and a half ago. I really didn't have the opportunity to get involved until recently. So the outreach committee was mine.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to be part of a wonderful board, as well as the liaison to the outreach committee. So some of the things that we've been engaged in, Jackie has touched on. We got Jazz by the Pool started again, which was fabulous. We had a homeowner forum outdoors so that the neighbors could all meet the different committees. We are currently planning, because we're doing kind of the same thing. We're all three, in case you are wondering, we're all three on the outreach committee. So you'll hear very similar things from all of us. We're all planning the 50th anniversary. And then there are like local things that I like, alleyways where we're gathering to get to know our neighbors, that is personal and fabulous. And it really touches, and speaks to who we are as a community.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Martin? You have a question? Yeah, well, it doesn't appear he's muted.
Yeah, he is.
Is he? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, he's down there. All right. Martin, you're muted. Now you're unmuted.
Can you hear me then?
Yes.
Hello. I've never used Zoom before, but here I am. I've lived in the same house on University Avenue for 44 years. Before that, in another Nepenthe home for 3 years. So I've been a Nepenthe resident for 47 years.
Wow.
The dues were originally $35 a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, oh my gosh. I like the spirit and the words of what I've heard. Let me say that, all of it. I just would like to take the opportunity to ask if anyone has anything to say about the landscaping behind all of our homes on University Avenue. It was gorgeous when we bought. 10 years after we bought, it began to be ignored. And despite innumerable promises, I have to admit only from staff that a dozen, 20 promises that we're going to get on it. Nothing has ever happened until some recent irrigation work. But I'd just like to hear somebody say that we're going to address this. And maybe even there's a cost to it. And it's time that, I don't want anybody to suffer, but it's time to make up for the fact that for 40 years, it's been ignored. And that's all I have to say. If anyone has anything to say about that, I know none of you are addressing specifics, which is probably a good thing. But I thank you for letting me talk, and I will continue to simply listen. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I recommend you mute yourself again, or we'll be getting all your background.
So I'm mute.
Let me start to say, just ask if anybody has a specific answer to that question.
No.
No specific, just a general comment. That's all.
All right, a general comment.
I was at a grounds meeting recently where some very articulate residents down in Zone 7 talked about this issue. I'd been totally unaware of it. And I think there were some positive responses from people on the grounds committee that they recognize that this is something that needs to be delved into and that it has a historic record of being part of the land that's been transferred or turned into the American River Parkway. I think someone is beginning to look at it, and I would hope we find a solution soon.
Mary?
Hi, Martin. I have spent actually quite a bit of time perusing your backyard. And I'm very well aware that it has changed dramatically and not really for the positive. I know the landscaping committee, the grounds committee works really hard to address issues like that. I actually talked to the 3 gentlemen who attended the last grounds committee meeting, and they are doing their own research in some of the areas. I think some of the key things that we could do is fix some of the irrigation that was cut off when we kind of gave back the levee to the American River Flood Association. And I would be very open to meeting with homeowners in that area to listen to you, to hear more specifically what your concerns are and to hopefully address them.
Sure. Any addition you'd like to add?
No, I really.
Okay.
I've seen it and that I know it does not look good. That's
All
I
right.
know.
We have another
Hi,
question.
yeah, Diane Duraway. There are many committees involved at Nepenthe along with the board. And I'd like to know if, as a member of the board, if you would be willing to say that you will attend the even just one committee meeting to know what goes on, how we propose things, how we talk to homeowners, because just I myself have been involved with asking board members to attend a specific meeting and no one has attended. So there you're talking about reaching out to the community, where I think you could begin by reaching out to the various committees, not just the outreach committee.
Is that
That's
question
all of it.
directed to me?
That's for all of you.
Okay, well, I'll start off. That's a very valid question, and thank you. I'm not sure you're all aware that board members are liaisons to specific committees. So I was the liaison to outreach. Each and every board member is a liaison to a specific committee. I'm more than happy to attend other committee meetings. I think it's important as a board member to understand what's going on overarchingly. More than happy to be a part of it. I actually have not been invited to any other committees. I've attended a grounds committee. I have been on Zoom for a couple others, but if ever invited, I of course would be there.
Cheryl?
I think you're right. I think that the grounds meeting I went to recently was my very first grounds meeting, and it was fascinating. All kinds of topics, information. I don't know how to tell one tree from another, but these people do, and it was impressive. It was wonderful to see their skills, their abilities, and what effort and energy they put into it. I have worked for a fence issue with the architectural committee. So I've been to several of those meetings. The only one I haven't attended is finance. And I would think if board members, that one way to approach what you're asking is to make sure, and I don't know what happens in board meetings, I don't know, but if each liaison comes back and reports, not just from the minutes, but really reports what happened in each meeting they attended, they spread that knowledge so that maybe each board member can't go to a Thursday night meeting, a Tuesday night meeting, a Wednesday night meeting kind of thing, but it is possible for those members to come back and say, hey, I'm on the ARC committee. Let me tell you the things they're struggling with. Let me tell you what they're worried about, so that we have that at that level, not just written minutes. And maybe that's one way to address it. But I think it's a great idea.
Anything to add here?
No, I agree. That's a great idea. And I know each committee does have a liaison, so I don't know if your particular committee didn't have one at the time or what happened, but sure.
I'm talking about not just our liaison.
Oh, but
I'm talking about board members who are not a liaison, who come to the meeting to see what's going on, because our proposals go to the board. And I think many times, if you haven't been to a meeting to see how it functions, you have a different answer to proposals.
and it helps to have the history behind why
Yes,
the
yes.
proposal is made. I understand. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Can I just, just one other note, just so you do know that actually what Cheryl said does occur, that the board liaisons share information for just the reason that you highlighted, so that we're aware as a entire board what's going on. So thank you again for bringing that up.
Okay. Steve?
Our CC&Rs require directors to enforce the provisions of the governing documents, but the board also has discretion not to enforce them, taking into consideration the cost of enforcement versus the benefits. Mary Gray, in the past, you've ignored some provisions of the governing documents. You made a major change to your residence's exterior without first applying to the ARC or without getting the board's approval. For several years, you have planted in the common area. So my question of all three of you is, if elected, how will you decide whether or not to enforce the provisions of the governing documents? Will you vote to enforce only those you happen to like?
Okay, since it was specifically, since Mary was specifically mentioned, I'll let her respond.
Yes, I will respond. And I do feel like that was an attack. To be clear, there's a lot of folklore around my house that spreads through this community. I was a new resident 11 years ago, and the existing chairperson of the grounds committee gave me permission to plant. At that point in time, I didn't know that it was required to be in writing. So I hope at some point the folklore on my land and my common ground will die off with that response. Addressing the other issue you brought up, it has gone to the ARC. It has been addressed. I did follow the rules as written in the CC&Rs. I believe in our CC&Rs. I personally follow them. Thank you for asking.
Cheryl.
I think the board must look at all of the regulations, the rules and the laws about any issue. If the CCNR has a prohibited issue, then maybe a variance sometimes is needed, but it has to be for the entire community. And the things I think you have to look at are, one, can we keep track of this? How do we manage it? What's the impact, not just today, but next year, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now? You brought up planting outside, so I'll use that as an example of my thinking anyway, is, okay, we can look at a variance, but what's going to happen when we have water cuts? Who's going to pay for the irrigation? Who's going to pay for the maintenance? What's going to happen when somebody sells a house and moves? How is Nepenthe indemnified from having to go in and redo if somebody has done something? How do we make sure that we don't have a neighbor that plants bamboo outside their fence instead of something else? That doesn't mean you don't look at variances and that you don't look at alternatives to the letter of the law. But I think those are all the kinds of things that people have to ask questions about, have to think through, and have to think about what's it going to cost personally, what's it going to cost financially, what's it going to cost for future.
And finally,
You have to look at the CCNRs and the applicable rules, laws, and regulations that govern this area. And you have to make your decisions based on that. It depends, and a lot of it probably depends upon interpretation of the law. So you have to be consistent in how you interpret the CCNRs. And if you do have a variance, it has to have a lot of support from the community, from the board, and it has to be financially responsible. It has to make sense. But I think things should be governed by the CCNRs.
let me see, we have back here. in one of
Hello, I'm Peter Klein. I live on Lower Swarthmore. I refer to Lower Swarthmore because, in my opinion, it has been neglected. Upper Swarthmore is very lovely. But on the point of variances, I asked for some consideration of, or to hear what your policy might be. Variances to me indicate that at least a committee has looked at some change of the way things have been done in the past and approved it. I would ask whether variances don't become then part of our understanding of what we can do. Therefore, any variance grants to anybody who is a member the same opportunity to do what that variance has approved. There are not variances, there are a bunch of individual decisions, and every time we would request something, a decision has to be made again, rather than the variances becoming part of the body of quote law, unquote. The CCRs are generally very vague. It's the interpretation of them that changes us back and forth and asks us what's really going on. So I would propose as a question, how do you feel about the opportunity to do as we wish without requesting permission of anything that has been approved in the past? And that would be my question.
Okay, so the question is, how do you feel about the option for individuals to take action in contradiction to the CCNRs?
No, without requiring a new decision in each case. If it's already been done, and I understand we're about
Okay,
to.
you're
publish.
asking then, if a variance has been accepted, does that establish a precedent for all future similar cases? All right, that will be the question then. If a variance for a particular activity has been granted, a different kind of window, a different kind of door, or whatever it might happen to be, does that set a binding precedent for all future situations, like situations? Is it stereo decisis? Okay. Sure.
I am not sure that it would be binding because I think each situation is different. Someone could say, well, they put a window there, so I'm going to put a window there, and they could put a stained glass window up. So you can't, I don't think you can say one variance is overall permission for the entire neighborhood to do a certain thing.
All right. Cheryl.
Well, I concur. I think this difference, we all have different floor plans, different things. I think it applies to the unit. Someone may have gotten Jackie's example, a window, but yours may be different, maybe in a different place. I think at least an application to make a change according to a variance that's been granted might be. But I think the bigger picture is if there are enough requests for variances, why don't we have something in the CCNRs that permits those activities so that it is not a struggle each and every time we want to look at a topic?
Okay.
I agree with both of you. The way that CCNRs, my understanding, are currently written, that if a variance is granted, it is for that one time. It isn't for everybody else who thinks it's a good idea. I like Cheryl's idea of if we see it a lot, is it better to make a change? The board currently is looking at something like that. There's been lots of requests for a particular thing, and we are looking at a rule because getting CCNR changes through are very difficult. So we're looking at a different avenue, but I definitely agree that if we start seeing the desire of our homeowners for one thing, that we should address it and make it possible.
Okay. Do we have?
Okay, hi, I'm Ashley and I'm a board member. And I guess my question is, we receive a lot of different invoices. We receive a lot of proposals. Some of them are very large, I think it turned out being 165,000 if you include the tree work for the pilot project. We see a lot of Carson invoices. Quite often, we don't even know what they're going to plant. We see other proposals from committees. We see things in their minutes. I guess my question is, are you going to trust whatever the committee puts before you because they voted on it and that's what they think and that's what they agree? Or are you going to question these items and really look at their work that's been done, really look and see what's actually behind it and look deeper and, you know, ask more questions about the irrigation? Or it might even be you are asked without any information, point blank. You know, it's a great cause, but we want $3,000 for Christmas tree from these lovely group of women that are doing a lot in the community. Are you willing to maybe not be popular and either with the committee members or with certain homeowners living here? How are you going to handle kind of those more gray areas of the job and really apply, you know, those analytical skills, the fiduciary standards, looking at other solutions, or maybe, you know, asking to pause and get more information? Are you going to do that in this job? Because that's something that I keep getting voted down on over and over again. And some of the progress I'd like to make, I get outvoted on.
Okay, let me pose this as a
So sorry, I
somewhat
vented.
simplified question. How do you propose to address and respond to recommendations from committees, particularly apparent when they involve economic implications?
Thank you, Will.
I'll start.
Want me to go first? I feel like I've already been doing that. We get our board packets well ahead of the meeting. We can see what is proposed by the committees. We have the ability to go out, for example, I'll use grounds because grounds submits a lot of requests for changes. I can walk around and see what they are, see where they are, see if it's reasonable. I would like more detail, more understanding of what goes into it, and probably in the future I'll ask for that. Another example is fencing. we get bids for fencing all the time. And what makes sense, to go out, and I oftentimes will walk by, see what they're asking for, see what they're doing. So like Ashley, I feel like it's really, really important to meet our fiduciary responsibility and not just accept what comes in, but make sure I clearly understand it and ask the necessary questions.
Jackie?
I think it's important to trust but verify. And I have an example that a tree fell down by Barbara at my house and it impaled my roof last winter. And it went through the second story all the way down to the first. So the tree was cut down and there's a 8x10 space in front of Barbara's home. And when Steve was nice enough to take me on the landscape tour, the invoice to repair that 8x10 area is $3,750. So he sent me the invoices for that and some other repairs or remediation. And the invoice is unlike any I've ever seen from any vendor. It just says this plant, irrigation, bark. And there's no line item price for anything on that. And so it's really hard to contrast and compare those kind of invoices when it's just a dollar amount and you don't know what the contractor is actually charging you for each item or for the labor. And that was a big surprise for me. And when insurance claims, I've seen invoices 1,000 times a week. So I was really surprised by that. So I think there should be oversight. I mean, a lot of those I know are approved and maybe the grounds committee has a level of comfort with that kind of invoice, but I don't. So.
I think the time to ask questions is long before there's an invoice. If there is a proposal from any committee to spend money, I think the board needs to ask questions about what it is, what's going to approve, what's going to change and why. And that should be communication. If I, as a board member, felt that I didn't understand what grounds was asking for, that's the time to ask it, not to, well, I guess I better vote. I do believe that we have a responsibility to watch the money. And sometimes it's small amounts of money that make a big difference in the long run. So I think you start with, here's the report, here's the request. What questions do I have? Ask the questions and get answers that I'm happy with before they're ever approved.
Okay, we have a written question. What are your ideas for ensuring the safety of Nepenthe, its residents, and its amenities? And I'll start with Jack.
Okay. My ideas really depend upon the neighbors themselves. I know people have suggested that we have cameras everywhere. That's expensive. Everyone's worried about their dues. So I don't really see a way to get that. That would be optimal. It would be ideal to have cameras, but I don't see how its affordability is available right now. So I think it's getting the neighborhoods involved. Like my alley, we all know each other. We all have a phone tree or a text group. And it's usually for cocktails on Friday afternoons, but we all look out for each other's houses and we all know when something is going on in our alley. So I think we need to encourage the homeowners to become more involved with each other and look out for each other. And then the lights that Peter has worked on.
Mr. Lollipop Man.
Mhm.
Cheryl.
I think the same kind of thing. We're in a city. Whether we're a separate community called Campus Commons or not, we are part of this city. We're urban. There are going to be criminal activities that take place here or around here. And that means we all need to be cognizant of what we're doing or not doing to personally take care of things. Don't leave your keys in the car. Don't leave windows down. Don't leave front doors unlocked. There is a responsibility in the lighting and other things that this community does, but it's dependent a lot upon us, just like it is if you lived on F Street or 2nd Street. I think, though, that we can, and Nina White, I don't know if she's still on the Zoom, is my neighborhood person who took into her hands to say, we're all going to meet out here. We're all going to exchange email addresses. We're going to exchange phone numbers. We're going to keep each other posted when we're on vacation so we know what's happening. And that makes a tiny little part that we feel like we know who's there and what's happening. And gee, that young person going in that door shouldn't be going in that door because they don't live there. And I think that's part of it.
Okay, Mary?
Going last always says, yeah, I agree with all of you, because really, really great ideas. And I just want to let you know, like I heard from John recently that Swarthmore had a huge meeting, similar to what you guys are saying, so that neighborhood watch is spreading through our community. And I think it's really the way to go. I completely agree with you. I'm lucky enough to have great alley people too. We all know each other. It's really, really kind of the perfect way to provide a level of safety in our community. And I do want to do a shout out to Peter because he is doing the other thing that we were told in the safety forum, provide really good lighting. And thanks to Peter, we will be doing that. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, let me editorialize just once here. 20 some years ago, my wife started that on the alley on Vanderbilt and it's still going.
Great.
And I think the secret around here to building community is around the alleys. It's the natural structure. So for anybody out there listening who hasn't done it, after 30 years in law enforcement and 20 years teaching criminal justice, I say that's the very best thing we could probably do. Okay, we have more questions, more questions, more questions, more questions. All right, I guess we now are wrapping it up. Each person, I ask again that you keep it to 3 minutes. We'll start from the far end and work this way. 3 minutes to wrap up.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank everyone who attended and who cares about our community and who really cares to hear about what we're doing. Thank you all. Another thank you to Betsy and the management staff for everything you do as a board member and as a resident. I completely appreciate that. And I want to do a shout out, as you highlighted, the volunteer committees are super important and they are the backbone of this community. The board changes. The board changes every year, but the continuity is there. So again, I completely appreciate all the effort and work that goes on. And in summary, I've heard really good questions and I hope you've gotten really good answers. If elected, and I am asking for your vote, I will continue to provide service to you as my community, a fiduciary service. I look forward to doing all kinds of things, finding better ways to communicate with you. I really do look forward to being a part of a different committee so I better understand our committee structure. And I look forward to providing input to, better ways to communicate. I don't know if you've noticed, but our newsletter has a board column now. We're summarizing the meetings. So in summary, I hope to serve you again for 2 years. I look forward to your vote and I look forward to hearing from you if you have questions, concerns, or ideas. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm also asking for your vote. My background and my experience, I think, counts towards being able to make decisions in tough situations, to be able to research, look at issues, listen to people, make decisions, and then carry forward things that need to be done. I think we have a wonderful community. I count on so many people here to give me information for the things that I plan and the activities that I participate in. I couldn't do it without people telling me what they want, what they like, what they don't like, what their suggestions are. And I think that follows through in how I would be a board member. I would want to hear either directly from you or ideally through the committees so that the committees can funnel, talk, and give the board distilled information about the topics you're concerned about. Thank you.
And finally, Jack.
Okay, I'm gonna say it too. I'm here to ask for your vote. I'm amazed to see this many people out here. It's really nice to see how involved and people on Zoom also. I would really like to serve on the board just because I'm curious about how the money is being spent. I think that's my main focus. I just want to see where it goes and how we can do it responsibly and still maintain the atmosphere around here and the amenities. And that would be my focus. Thank you.
Okay, thank everybody for appearing today. And thank you for your questions. Thank the folks out there in Never Never Land for their attention and questions. And
Zoom-a-rama.
presumably, I will ask the outreach committee, you have goodies or something waiting?
Yes, help yourself in the kitchen. Thank you, Betsy, for getting the goodies.
My pleasure, but thank you, candidates, for stepping up because we can't do it without you. So thank you.
It'd be boring with no one sitting here, huh?
I know. What is that about?
I don't know. They keep selling these.
I know, I'll hear.
It's nice to meet you.
Oh, that's right. Huh? I know a lot of people that live in campus corner, so it's easy to make those connections and find out what's going on.